A community meeting that has been called by our local elected officials to discuss the recent election. If you have not signed in, would invite you to do that now before the real conversation starts. And so is there anyone who's sitting who hasn't signed in? Excellent. So our three elected officials who will be the main presenters this evening are here. Would you guys like to sit?
I think we should stand.
You want to stand? Oh, okay. Then,
I think we're going to have to stand.
oh, very good. As you can see, we're figuring out how this is going to go as we do it. Each of the elected officials will speak for a few minutes, and then we will open the floor up for questions. When we do that, we will monitor folks who speak and try to keep their conversations to maybe a minute of statement and then a question. And let's kind of see how that works. So I understand that of the three of you, you were going to go first, right, Jim?
Oh, why don't we start with introductions?
Oh,
with Jane.
You mean there's somebody here who might not know who all these folks are?
Putting faces to names.
Very good. On my right, your left, is Gene Wagenius, the 63B representative. On my immediate left, your right, is the 63A representative. And on the far left, right...
His name.
Oh, this is Jim Dabney. I'm sorry.
Oh, we all know that.
Amateurs. And on the far right is Patricia Torres, the state senator from District 63. And with that, I will get out of the way and give the floor to Jim, who has something to say.
Good evening and thank you. Let me start with thanking you all for my re-election and the confidence that you I also want to recognize two other elected officials in the room. We've got Councilmember Andrew Johnson from the city's 12th ward, and somewhere here back there is School Board Director Nelson Inns from the victorious levy renewal referendum campaign. 84% of you voted to renew the levy referendum for the Minneapolis schools. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. Jean and Patricia and I did want to put a little bit different structure on this evening than our normal town halls, which are just kind of a, hi, what's your question? Sort of thing, which is all fine, but we thought this moment in history required a little bit different structure. So my job is to open with a bit of an overview and a couple of other things. So I actually got out the paper at home, the big paper, and I tried to do it large enough so the folks in the back of the room, if they have my eyesight, could still read it. I'm not sure I was successful, but on the federal level, you know that Trump and Pence got elected. That's probably why you're here. I do want to encourage you as I wander off. When you talk about Trump, talk about Pence too. The man is an unreconstructed bigot, and we should not let America forget that. Editorial comment. We'll have many editorial comments, Gene warns you. In the U.S., there are currently 51 Republican senators, 46 Democratic senators, and 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats. There is one to-be-determined Senate seat, and this will come up again when we talk about the Federal House of Representatives. That's Louisiana. Louisiana has an election system, as I understand it, where the election occurs, and if no candidate received at least 50% of the vote plus one, there's then a later runoff. So there will be another election in Louisiana for the U.S. Senate seat December 10th. And so the outcome on that one is not yet determined. That gets you to 100, which is how many senators we have. The U.S. House 240 GOP members, 194 Democratic members. That's a slight pickup for the Democrats. There is one House seat to be determined. This will not surprise you now. That is Louisiana. There actually are 2 U.S. House seats in Louisiana, again on December 10th, but one of them pits 2 Republicans against each other. So we know what's going to happen there in terms of partisanship. We don't know the person, but we know the partisanship. The other seat is actually a Democrat versus Republican contest, so we don't know the outcome there. Governorships, again, trying to set a broad umbrella for understanding what's going to happen in Minnesota and where we're at as a country as well. After this last election, 33 Republican senators, governors, my apologies, 16 Democrats, 1 independent. Looking at the state legislatures, which are the sort of thing that Gene and Patricia and I look at, 33 chambers, that's supposed to be 66 chambers are Republican. If I had a red marker, I'd change it now. My apologies. 30 chambers are Democrat, 1's a tie, and 1 is undecided. Then there's some weird things out there, like Alaska has a majority of Democrats in the Senate, but one of the Democrats caucuses with the Republicans, so that gives Republicans control of the state Senate in Alaska. There's all sorts of weird stuff out there if you start looking into this. The one thing I want to say in wrapping up this portion is on the governor's races. North Carolina is a happy story at this point. Those of you who follow these politics, Governor Pat McCrory, the Republican incumbent governor, the signer of HB 2, which is best known as one of the transgender bathroom bills in the country that has cost the state of North Carolina millions of dollars, as even the College Athletic Association that's headquartered in North Carolina pulled some of their contests out of the state in response to HB 2. It also, and this sometimes gets lost, eliminated all protections from anti-discrimination for the LGBT community from state law. He has lost by just under 8,000 votes. They are not done yet. Friday was the final canvassing, which was supposed to be the final vote count, but there are still both some absentee and provisional ballots left. McCrory, at least, the Republican incumbent, has lawyered up. I assume that Cooper, the Democratic challenger, is lawyering up as well. That one's worth watching, but right now, that's a really nice win in my book. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I am so happy to see this room almost full of very good friends. So thank you so much for being here. And like Jim, I want to say thank you for voting for me and electing me to represent you for 4 more years. Very good for years. You know, we lost the majority in the Senate in the special election in 2010. Of issues. The format of this, as Jim stated, will be different. We would like to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts, but we also want to hear a little bit about what do you think needs to be the direction in terms of, you know, what we do in the House and in the Senate, because we represent a very progressive district that really has the opportunity to engage in the election for the governor, of course, and we will determine the outcome in the 5th Congressional District for the governor's race. We can talk a little bit about how we do this. Right now, I wanted to give you a little bit of a perspective with the state. So we lost the Senate in Minnesota by 1 vote. So we are still counting votes in 2 particular areas where the votes were so close that we decided to hire an attorney to really look into a recount. So we will see. We don't have a lot of hope in there, but we thought that we should try because 1 is really, it's just really a small number. In the House, the majority in the Republicans got by how many? What is the number?
We lost House 4 more seats.
Okay.
It's 76-57, which those of you who are good at math recognize that adds up to 133, and there are 134 seats in the House. One seat, Representative Bob Barrett. Representative Bob Barrett from Little Falls?
Around there.
Round there. Actually, that was the issue. The court determined that he did not live in his legislative district, which is required by law. By the time the court made that determination, it was too late for the GOP to put someone else's name on the ballot. So the court already called, weeks before the November 8th election, a special election for Valentine's Day that will fill that seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in terms of, the direction of the state, I wanted to give you a little bit of a perspective from the Senate. We have a majority leader that actually has been very opposed to marriage equality, very conservative, very religious person, and very charismatic too. So we are going to see really a direction of hard work, in my opinion, in the Senate, but it's going to be really directed to very specific issues that are really not very progressive and in line with what you may be thinking for the future, really in all directions, business, transportation, and issues related to LGBT communities. So you need to know that. The other part I think that you also need to know is that in terms of what the structure of the Senate, we have not made a decision yet. We are going to be in the minority, and for those of you that do not know, it's unlikely, of course, that our legislation or bills that we introduce will go really far unless they are in line with what the majority is proposing. Some of you lobby at the legislature and really understand. Jeff Hayden was sitting to me when we met after, the Senate always meets 2 days after the election to talk about structure. So we already had scheduled a meeting to talk about our structure, thinking that we were going to be in the majority. We were sitting inside at the hotel, and Jeff Hayden turns to me and he said, there is nobody outside because there were no media, no lobbyists. There was absolutely no one waiting for the results of the structure of the minority. Everybody was with the majority. So that's just to give you a perspective of what you should expect. Really, there is no one out there waiting for us to really move something forward, which is really an unfortunate case because now it's in the House and the Senate. We continue to have the governor, of course, and you know that we're going to count on the governor. And for those of you who are asking, what can we do? I think that the governor is going to be really an office where we really need to work with and work on, because he's our friend, and obviously he's the one who's going to be able to leverage our presence and our voice in the negotiation table. He is the only one. So working with his commissioners, and for those of you who don't know, kind of where to go, please come to us, because this is really a time where we will be doing the same with you, and doing it with you will make a big difference for us to have presence and to have a voice at the governor's office. We also need to figure out in terms of, the following year, bonding would be a very significant issue because we need more than a majority. And so perhaps for the following year, we will have an opportunity to work with you in trying to figure out how to do that more work in terms of bonding and making some requests, perhaps where we have the numbers, especially in the Senate, to move forward. I don't think the House will have the numbers for capital investment. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a perspective on that, and also ask that you collaborate with us in terms of letting us know where do we need to go and how do we build coalitions that could be more influential in terms of partnering with the governor and partnering with the Senate somewhat, because we have a very small majority, just one vote, and then working with the House. So thank you very much.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about the other half of our district, because we are in Jim's half of the district, and in a Senate district there are 2 House districts, and ours is, the Senate district is long and narrow and goes into Richfield, and so I want you to know that I represent way south, starting about 43rd, and south to the border of the city, and then over into 4 precincts in Ridgefield. That's just so you all kind of get a picture here. The second thing I wanted to tell you about is that each of us worked hard in this last election, but we did different things, and I think you'll hear about what Jim did. I know he was working hard in some suburban races, and Patricia was working in places like Wilmer, and I spent most of my time when I wasn't campaigning for myself, which was most of the time, in western Minnesota, in a district that we had won 4 years ago, lost by a little bit 2 years ago, thought we had a great chance this year, excellent candidate, and he lost by a lot this year. Which brings me to the numbers, so we can we're all starting off kind of in the same, we all have the same context when we talk about this election. I think a lot of people have heard that, but that's not even across the state, and I want to particularly mention that here. I think we were all worried about the turnout in our districts, but strangely enough, and I do think strangely enough, the turnout in my district was more than in 2012. That was the presidential year for Obama. More in Jim's district, more in Susan Allen's district, and Paul Thiessen's district, and Frank Hornstein's district. So South Minneapolis actually turned out and voted stronger, much stronger than it did in 2012. I think that's surprising, but when you consider that, you have to then say, which I have not analyzed yet, where it was, but in the suburbs and outstate, the voting had to have been substantially further down than it has been commonly reported in the newspaper. So to give you, that's just to give you some context as we actually discuss this election, and specifically what the election is telling us and how we react. So I think with that, we're going to hear from you. And I don't know if you want to take the mic and moderate, but I want people to make observations about what they're thinking, what they're feeling. I mean, we've had this has been a hard time.
We're not hearing you.
Okay, this has been a hard time for folks, and I know that. So I think this is the place to talk about that, what it means, and what it means for just for the state and for us. What does it mean for us? So you want to...
Thank you, ma'am. So, I said earlier that it's time for audience participation and contribution. Let's try to agree to statements of a minute or so, and then a question, and perhaps if you have a particular representative that you, or come. If you have someone that you'd like to address your issue, pick one of them. And the first hand I see is the lady in blue.
I don't know how loud my voice is, but I think I can manage. I am a Baha'i, and I'm much of the minority in the whole city. There's only like 200 of us. Can't hear you.
The question to come up to the mic, maybe?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm a Baha'i, and one of the tenets of my religion is we are not to participate in partisan politics, and that principle has been well demonstrated in this last election. Nevertheless, we're supposed to educate ourselves and vote and participate in our communities. And I can tell you, on that Tuesday night by 9 o'clock, I had to take an extra pill and go to bed because it seemed so discouraging. But since then, what I've decided is this. You know, God does things. And I'm thinking that even Trump is not as good as God, right? Do we all agree on that? You might think that he is, but I am wanting to commend Mr. Dabney. I have a communications going, my name is Echo
Oh, yeah, okay.
Mitchell. I have a communications going with you,
We've never met before. I only know her through her emails.
but I knew that you were gonna win. I mean, I knew it anyway when I voted. But I asked for 2 vote things when I came out, and they wouldn't give me 2 because of all the controversy. I had to take them off afterwards. I thought, oh no, I don't want anyone to think I voted for that guy. But anyway, to finish, I also feel that in Minnesota, we are very lucky to have a governor like Governor Dayton, and the parts of the entire governing aspect, including Ellison, who is also in my district. I'm very proud of the fact that he was reelected too.
Thank you, Echo. I just want to make an observation to folks. The governor is not running for re-election. The governor's office will be up on the 2018 ballot in 2 years. Traditionally, Democrats don't show up for midterm elections. If the DFL loses the governor's house or the governor's office in 2018, the Senate is certainly GOP, and the House may well be, at which point we're Wisconsin.
Redistricting, say the word.
Redistricting comes up in 2022, but is based on the 2020 census when the new governor will be in office.
Yes, ma'am, in the red sweater.
I was just wondering, looking at that one vote you were talking about, that special election in February, is that enough to switch the House back if it goes?
No, it's the Senate. The one vote difference is in the Senate, and it's 4 years. So we would have to wait 4 years in order to change
What was the
that.
vote then that I did this year, the one that's going to be redone in February?
That's a House seat, and so the House is currently 76 Republicans, 57 Democrats, and it will change one of those numbers by 1.
Everything, organized around.
Sir?
Are all Republicans created alike, and are there in the House and Senate? Oh, sorry.
Hal, maybe one thing is for you to repeat questions.
Sure.
Okay.
You may be able to reach the microphone, but not everybody will be.
I will do that.
The question is, are all Republicans created alike, and are there Republicans in the House and the Senate that we can work with on some issues?
I would say, yes, all Republicans are created alike. One of the things Jim and I both posted for the election before the election was a picture which showed that all of the Republicans were supporting Trump. I will tell you one other place where we're going to have lots of controversy on is global warming real? Do we need to do anything or not? And the Republicans of last year, and I'm sure of this year because they're actually further to the right than they were, if you can believe that, but it's true. Only one Republican acknowledges that global warming is real and created by people. One. So they actually vote as a block. They have. I don't expect that to change. Do you expect that to change, Jim?
Is that in our state?
Is that in our state legislatures?
That's our state legislatures. That's our state house that I was just describing. That's our state house. All of them supported Trump. All but one says that global warming, just to give you a feel, that's just one example. They vote, one says global warming is real and created by humans. They almost uniformly vote as a block.
I saw a hand here, the lady in the blue and the green. If you state your question, then I'll repeat it.
Oh, all right. Actually, 2 things, and I thought of something else while you were talking about global warming. All those Republicans who think there is no global warming, I'm assuming they can read and that they've been to school. So based on that, is it really because admitting global warming is going to cost a lot of money? Admit that there's global warming because then they will have to acknowledge that there's an enormous amount of money that needs to be spent on energy and every other aspect of the problem. Is the real problem that they don't want to spend the money?
I actually don't think so. I think the problem is that that caucus has been supported by oil and gas and coal money. And supported to, let me give you another example. The Chamber of Commerce, which supported the Republicans, actually intervened in a lawsuit supporting North Dakota, in a lawsuit between North Dakota and Minnesota on renewable energy, supported North Dakota and the coal interest. The Minnesota Chamber of Commerce supported North Dakota. So I think in this case, it's follow the money.
Can I say something else, or should I wait for another turn?
Well, go ahead, if you're following up on this.
Well, no, it's totally different.
Okay, let's somebody else.
One here and then one in the back. Sir.
Hello, my name is Siad Ali. I'm also a member of Minneapolis Board of Education. My question is this. Minnesota, we have 87 counties. And out of 87 counties, Donald Trump won 78 counties. And Hillary Clinton won in Minnesota only 40,000 votes, which is a very small number. So, what went wrong? Who's voting for this guy? I mean, where these votes coming from? Thank you.
So over 100,000 Democrats did not get out to vote. And I don't know if you remember this, but when we were getting into kind of the final week of the election, before the election, our prediction was that a lot of the Republicans were not going to get out to vote. That was our prediction, that they were not excited about their candidate and that therefore they were going to have a very low turnout. It just so happened that it was the opposite, that they had a very high turnout. All the Republicans went out and actually voted for Trump. And a lot of our people did not get out to vote. You probably have heard a lot and have speculated a lot, but I want to talk about something, if you allow me to, because I think this is a very important message and is something that I want to hear more from your perspective. We are talking really about the divide in this country, and you have heard in the radio lately about the white working class, predominantly men who are without jobs, who believe that they've been left out of this economy and left out of this opportunity that this country offers. I do not believe that we as Democrats really understood what it was. We have been talking about the growing numbers of communities of color. We have been talking about really the opportunity that we have with immigrant communities. And we have been focusing on that almost at the exclusion, in my opinion, of a very vast number of people that are working class people who really have no opportunities today to own a house, send their kids to college, afford health care. And I believe that we need to be talking about it. And as a person of color who believe that the racial tone of this election goes beyond anything I could stand and I could accept, I think that it has been a call and really an awareness for me personally of how removed I have been really from that perspective. And just in the Senate, I have to tell you that 3 of the senators who lost their seats in the Iron Range, this is unprecedented. These are areas that have never elected a Republican before. We have always counted on having those senators elected and re-elected. We lost 3 of them in those areas. And it is because there is a very large number of white working class men who are not able, they are in their 50s and their 60s, the industries that they used to work for and with no longer exist. And they just don't know at that time in their lives what is next. What can they do? What kind of training can they get? And they don't have a pension. So I think this is really something that we need to understand as Democrats, and I think that is where it went wrong. I believe that we have become very we live in universes that are not connecting. We're isolating ourselves and living within our neighborhoods. We talk with the people we want to talk, and I want to say this just because I think it's very important. We have become so political that, you know, in the Senate, when we were in the majority, we never gave the minority a chance, never. They never had a chance of moving forward absolutely anything. So now, it's their turn. I don't think they're going to give us a chance to move absolutely anything, because that's the tone we've set in politics. You don't have a chance when I'm in the majority, so now I'm in the majority and you don't have a chance. I believe very strongly that we need to change that system, because it's just not, it's not sustainable and it's not helping our country.
This is it. I agree to the lady in the back to be next, and then you're next. And then one of you two. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
This might be a perfect segue to what you just said, Senator. So I work for the state, and I'm also a negotiation rep for the state union, and our contracts are coming up next year. And we met before the elections, and so we kind of had like, oh, well, one Dem, one Republican, maybe half-half, but now we have to change our complete strategy. And President-elect Trump just mentioned today how he's going to kind of revamp the federal employee program there, and how he's going to make unions less strong, remove collective bargaining, and potentially increasing the ability to, you know, pack it with his cronies. Just curious what your thoughts are in terms of, I don't know, next steps. Is it focusing on the governor election in 2 years, and the House elections in 2 years, and the AG's election? And
Their contracts with the administration. The administration is the employer, the legislature is not. But we then have to ratify the contracts. There is a committee process, there's a special committee that deals with employee relations issues. That has become sharply politicized with the last 2 years with the GOP majority in the House. To be honest, I would anticipate that we will not ratify the state employee contracts, because the Republican majorities will refuse to do it. Traditionally, when those contracts come to the floor, the Democratic Party position is those have been negotiated between the employer and the employee. We should not amend those contracts on the floor to change those, because a contract is a package deal. I gave you this, I got that. You know, the leg bone's connected to the knee bone, which is connected to the hip bone, and it all turns into a package. And so we say, we don't mess with them. We either vote up or down. I anticipate the Republicans will refuse to vote up, particularly if it includes, as the governor has established, paid family leave. So that, specifically to your question about what should MAPE focus on, I'll let you guys make the decision. But again, if we lose the governor's office, we as Democrats, as progressives, as people who care about labor and working people, if we lose the governor's office in 2 years, you may not just not have a contract, you may not have a union that can bargain.
I'm not a very politically savvy person. I'm an educator, and I do pay attention to what's going on, and I haven't gotten really deeply involved in politics, and I do go out to vote every time I get an opportunity. One thing I wanted to address what you were saying about not paying attention, that, you know, we haven't paid enough attention to, you know, the white working class male who was like in their 50s and 60s. What I observed, I'm just going to make this quick comment and then I have a question. What I observed was, I think Trump is a very intelligent man. I think he's a lot smarter than we think he is. I think that he's very scrappy, and he has a very scrappy kind of intelligence. What I saw him doing, as far as, with my limited knowledge of politics, is that he just created a big distraction with all of the violence and demagoguery and yelling. And while he was distracting everybody over here, Hillary Clinton was distracted over here and attending to all of that aggression and defending all that. And it got us all hooked because we're all, feminists from a certain generation, and we're, been fighting for our rights as immigrants. We got all distracted there, even though she's got a good plan to address exactly what you're saying. It didn't get said enough because of what he was doing. And that was just my experience as far as what I observed. The question that I have right now is that I would like to know what I can do as an individual to help elect a Democratic Congress in 2 years, and also what can we do to try to get more Democrats elected in very low-level city council positions, because the Republicans do this really well. They're very strategic, and they just get all of those Republicans, they encourage them and get them all elected into those low-level city council positions. They're very patient, they're very strategic, and I'm wondering what we can do to encourage those two things, and what I can do specifically as a volunteer to help elect a Democratic Congress in 2 years.
Districts like our district and the 5th Congressional District are very influential within our Democratic Party. And I have been thinking a lot about your question as to what do I need to do and what do I need to do with you, right? Because I represent a very progressive Democratic district. And so I think my conclusion of this thinking, and I'm still thinking because I don't have really a full answer, this is a tough time, is that we have to use this influential position in our Democratic Party to really move our Democratic Party in the direction that the country needs. And by that, I mean, many of you know, this is just my personal opinion, I was a supporter of Senator Sanders. I think that at the very beginning of the campaign, we understood that this issue about engaging millennials and engaging the working class was absolutely essential to our party, to the future of our party. We understood that very, very early. Yet, I believe that we get, not that I do not believe that Hillary Clinton was an exceptional candidate. I think she was exceptional. It's just that she was not, from the very beginning, we understood that she had a very hard time inspiring a very large group within our party. She had a very difficult time inspiring this group, and she was not able to gain momentum with that particular group. The momentum that she had with the very same group kept, bringing her to the forefront, but I do not believe that she ever really was able to bring these two groups. That is my belief, and I believe that our party was not able to really read that. So the answer, for me, the answer is that we really need to reflect on that. And we really need to look at demanding that we have candidates that really respond to these very issues that the entire state of Minnesota, the entire country, is asking us to respond to. And I think both parties really need to reflect about who are they selecting to run for office and who are they supporting, because I think we need to stop selecting the usual suspects. I think we need to really look into recruiting and electing people who are able to inspire the millennials, who are able to inspire larger communities. That's my opinion.
there were two, one and then two. The gentleman and then the lady, and then the gentleman here, and then I'll start again.
A brief statement leading to a question. I'm sure everybody in this room is aware of the fact that in real terms, the American people chose Hillary Clinton by a margin of 2 million votes. The Electoral College will choose Donald Trump, and that's too bad for us. But it leads me to the question, well, two things. A statement, we need to be careful and watch out in the newspapers and other places. Don't let the Republicans have the conversation be about how Americans have chosen Donald Trump and that this is what the country wants. They didn't, and it isn't. But it leads me to another question, which is after the election, I learned about a proposal which is floating in a number of states, which would be something in the nature of an interstate compact, where when enough states to total 270 electoral votes pass this legislation, committing themselves as a state to cast all their electoral votes to the winner of the popular vote nationally, that could ensure that whoever wins the popular vote nationally will win the Electoral College vote. I don't know if this is an idea with any future, if it's ever been even talked about in Minnesota, and I'd be interested in what you guys know about it.
So,
I didn't break it.
one observation and one response. The observation is the last time it came to the House floor, which was a number of years ago now, you could see it losing support as the debate went on. That's completely 180 degrees different than what normally happens to a bill. In fact, it's the only bill I can think of that, without being amended, lost support as people talked about it. My hesitation on it is voter suppression. And we would be entering into a legally binding contract that says to Arizona, when you reduce the number of polling places, or Wisconsin when you demand voter ID, or North Carolina when you put up barriers, or the US Supreme Court when they invalidate the Voting Rights Act, that's okay. Whoever wins those states will throw in with you. There were 16% less polling places this election than there were in 2012.
Let me just add one thing to that. We of course want a popular vote. I want a popular vote. But think about this, how we would get there. We already, as a state, are involved in a compact, just like the one that was described, and it's the Great Lakes Compact. And it's the states around the Great Lakes about taking water out of the lakes. But you need to know one thing about that compact. It had to pass Congress to be valid. Can you imagine a compact right now passing Congress? So I just don't want people to pin their hopes on changing everything, because I have had a sense that people are thinking, oh, that's the solution. Some people have argued, no, it doesn't have to pass Congress, but I suspect if you took that through a court, they'd say, no, the precedent has been set. It's in the Northwest Compact.
The gentleman here is next, and then let's say that one and that one. And that's it for now.
My husband is supposed to come stand with me, but what I wanted to say is we are here to help in whatever way we can, but what we're also interested and contemplative about is we spent most of our lives living rural until the last 10 years. And so we understand the rural people, and we feel like they felt abandoned. They felt like their premiums were too high, their deductibles were too high, and nobody was paying attention to them. So we're very interested in some kind of urban-rural outreach that maybe, and we're willing to do it as a doctor and a nurse, to do some screenings and teach them about insurance and single-payer, Medicare, Social Security. I had a friend in Northwest Wisconsin, where our cabin is, and she voted for Trump as an anti-Hillary vote, but she's voted Democrat most of the times. I said, what'd you do that for? Well, I just couldn't vote for Hillary. So then when I talked with her, I said, well, do you know Paul Ryan wants to get rid of Social Security and Medicare? Oh, no. Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
I said private voucher. So that's where I feel like there could really be some education, outreach, and I would love to do that because I think that somehow we've got to build that community so it's not just campaign rhetoric, and then people are paying attention to MSNBC and Facebook and all these kind of online things and Fox News, and they aren't really paying attention to what the average worker, the average person wants. And believe me, I'm really concerned about our ethnic communities. I've worked with them for the last 10 years. I care about everybody being a brother and sister in America. But the other hand is too, then how do we get these people to see that we really are for them? Education, that we want them to have good health care. We want them to be able to afford where they live. And I think somewhere there's got to be an outreach like that, because where I think the big Democratic DNC really lost it is, why didn't they go out to rural Michigan and rural Wisconsin and rural Massachusetts and rural Pennsylvania instead of have these huge big name concerts? They spent all that time doing that, and then the ordinary American wasn't reached out to. And so that's where I'm thinking, I'd like to know how we can help in any way to reach out so that going forward, people feel like they know what a Democrat is and how we're there to help them.
All right, I'm going to thank you. Yeah. I'm going to take that as an opportunity to step off. I will answer your question, but I've got in my head, not fully formed, but an idea of a hierarchy of responses. Some of you are going to feel called to resist. And I think of the work around the Dakota Access Pipeline. I think of the work around the 4th Precinct or Philando Castile. I think of those more energetic, direct action, militant actions. Please do. Okay? Secondly, some of you, I hope, like this woman, are going to be called to get more engaged in the community around issues you care about. You care about choice? Get involved with Planned Parenthood and NARAL. You care about rural issues? I'd suggest the Land Stewardship Project. You care about, I don't care, you care about having a paycheck at the end of the day? Get involved with your union. If you don't have one at your work site, start one. They'll be glad to help you figure out how to do that. The importance of these nonpartisan groups is it's a place to focus down, not broadly on Trump is a horrible human being, did you hear those things he said, but to instead engage people on the specific policy topics that he is moving on. And have a conversation on, is this what we want for our country? Secondly, and importantly, those organizations will then, in 2018, say to their members, you got to get out and vote. And remember, Democrats don't get out and vote in midterm elections. So finding like-minded people who care about specific policies and want to work on them, and then bridging that to voter registration and voter turnout is key for those issues and more broadly. And then there's some of you who are going to be called to do potlucks. And you know, that's okay too. Try to bring in some new folks. Because I can tell you there's a lot of folks who are scared right now about policy stuff, you know, ain't yours. Have a potluck, invite a couple of neighbors, build some relationships, because that's going to matter too. And my last thing on the hierarchy, take care of yourself. Okay? That self-care stuff, I finally, middle of last week, turned off the news, which is like completely unlike my personality, and switched to KBEM, Jazz. I want to thank the school board members for the Minneapolis Public Schools radio station. I need some space in my head when I do this for a living. Okay? We got to take care of ourselves as well as our community.
Tuck this in to the hierarchy someplace, but I was taken by the question, the observation of distraction. Start reading the business pages of the Star Tribune, etc. Because what I am seeing right now that Trump is doing, not saying, but doing, is the exact opposite of what he told people he was going to do to help them out. So there are, they're now already talking about repealing Dodd-Frank. Oh, who does that help? Wall Street. That's an easy one. But there's a more subtle one, and the more subtle one is that we have immense amounts of dollars, trillions of dollars sitting overseas that need to be repatriated back to the United States. And the way to do that is to lower the tax rate so people will bring their dollars home. And we're talking about major corporations now. But if you're going to do that, make a bargain that if you bring those dollars home, you're going to use some of that money for infrastructure, research and development, whatever it's job creating. But Bloomberg News reported today that that's not what the plan is. The plan is to bring it home with a low tax rate and then give it to shareholders in dividends. Terrible. That doesn't help the very people that Trump said he would help. So this is conversation. We have to understand the economics of what's going on. I think that is just imperative for us, because I think he has promised things that he is going to do the very opposite on. And I'm going to give you one more example that was in the news today. So talk about infrastructure, and we all know we need more infrastructure and our infrastructure is outdated. We all agree with that, and Trump knows that we agree with that. But what is his plan? His plan is not to just, and Paul Krugman wrote about that today in the New York Times, and you really ought to read it if you haven't. But his plan is not to just go out and spend the money on building a bridge, creating jobs, or building a road and creating jobs. But it is a plan to give tax credits to businesses so that they will create the jobs. And by the by, they will get the bridge or whatever when it's all over. So it's a backdoor way of privatizing. It's not going to create the jobs that we're expecting. So one of the things in the hierarchy has got to be paying attention to what he actually does. Because my expectation is that we're not going to have those jobs in a year and a half or 2 years. That all this distraction will make Trump extremely wealthy himself. And that's my cynical side.
I promised this gentleman the next, do you still, there you go.
Yeah, the people, you guys have talked about turnout and this sort of stuff. I know Congressman Ellison is making, and his bid for the chair for the DNC, getting the vote out and this sort of stuff is a priority for what he wants to do with that job if he's elected to be chair. And I think back over a number of decades now, and you see these various countries that have, come out from underneath tyrannies and this sort of stuff, and had the first elections in as long as in living memory in those places. And you see these pictures of these people, smiling faces and a purple dyed index finger to show that they voted. And these people were voting in spite of the fact of bombings and drive-by shootings at polling places and so forth, often at 90% or better rates of those who were eligible to vote voted. And we sit here in an election year and we get something around 60% turnout total. And we're all standing around patting ourselves on the back saying, boy, what a great turnout. Seriously? Do they teach civics in this country anymore? Well, citizenship shouldn't be a privilege per se, it should be a responsibility, and all the things that go along with it. And so we do need to get people to come out. 60% is just not acceptable. If you have a close election at a 60% turnout, that means when all is said and done, just over 30% of those eligible to vote are actually running things. That, my friends, is the very definition of a minority government. This is not acceptable. It just isn't acceptable. We've got to do better than that. It's just almost hard to go on with that, really. But we've got to get it done. We've got to get it done. People need to understand that if you're eligible to vote, you should feel a responsibility to vote. Do they teach civics in this country anymore?
Does anyone want to?
We teach civics to 16-year-olds. They're not eligible to vote. Oh, yeah. That's as far as it goes.
Yeah. Hi. I wanted to ask you guys, you talked about a hierarchy, and one thing I didn't hear you talk about was data. On the night of the election, they were pulling up those maps, and I have worked elections here in Minnesota, I worked elections in Pennsylvania, I worked elections in Broward County in Florida, and when they were pulling out that Broward County had 90% of the votes already out and that Hillary was so behind, my heart was breaking because I knew, because I worked Broward County, and if you've already got Broward County out and Hillary wasn't winning, it was gonna not be a good time for her. So we have data. So what are we doing here locally with our data to mine that data to get to understand what we have to do differently? Because in many of these 87 counties, I bet you if we had figured out how to turn around 20 votes, 100 votes, there is a chance of turning some of those counties over to our party. And we really need to think like that. We really need to think about what kind of meta-analysis do we need to do. At the national level, I'm flabbergasted.
I know very well that this year, we're completely lost. We didn't understand the numbers. No one really predicted this. And so I think that the age of social media and the impatience of people in terms of really digging deep into information is problematic for us. So when we try to explain how things work, and when Hillary Clinton tried to explain, well, you cannot bring those jobs back. That sentence was something people didn't want to hear. People didn't want to hear that. And so it's getting more and more complicated to frame our message, even based on data. We just cannot do it because we are in a new world of information. Most of what Trump said, he knew that he was not going to be able to deliver on that. He said it anyway, and people believed it. It's not like, if you say it so many times, people will believe it. I mean, it worked. And so maybe we need to think about what that is and how we frame our message. I do agree with the data issue, but I think we need to really be with the times today.
I think when the data of this election is, first of all, you cannot poll and figure out if race is going to be part of the election. It's impossible to poll. And I think we missed the part that race was playing in the election. So when I gave you the data right at the beginning, this district, Jim's district in South Minneapolis turned out strongly, I think that was a vote celebrating diversity. I think that's exactly, it was a plus. I told you I worked in a district that was bordered on the west, North Dakota, from Breckenridge down to Big Stone County. And my sense of that was that there was soft racism that made that election turn out the way it is. Because remember I told you the candidate, our great candidate, had won an election. He had been a mayor, an EMT, a teacher. He had perfect credentials. He won. He lost by a little bit. But in this last election, he lost by a ton, even though he ran a campaign, as far as I could see, was textbook right. He door knocked in every town. He went to every house himself. But the change of communities not wanting to change, they're not wanting to see change come as fast as it is, not wanting to see people move into their communities that are not like them. It's not hard racism like, I hate you. It's this more soft, I don't know, there are other ways to describe it, is I want my community to stay the same way it is. And I think that happened to us, particularly in that race and through the whole swath of southern Minnesota. I think it was different up north where, and this is my speculation, because we haven't mined the data yet, but I think this is what it's going to turn out to be, sadly.
I want to acknowledge that my selection is just about completely arbitrary, and there's a lot of unfairness. The gentleman here and the gentleman there, and then we'll start again.
Hi, my name is Dave, and I've been an organizer for a long time, and since the election I've stepped up my political organizing in my off time, so I kind of feel like I have 2 full-time jobs now. That's okay. But I guess 2 quick suggestions to build off of a lot of what was said. Number 1, I'll say I'm pretty afraid lately as a Jew with Jewish kids, but I'm more afraid for folks that are Muslim and Latino immigrants. I showed up to my first anti-detention deportation rally a couple days ago, and that was really powerful, and I'm going to do it a lot again. So being out in the street, that appeals to me, so I'll do some of that, I guess some of all of them. But I think as the DFL, I do think we got to do some of that as the DFL. So I want to just kind of push for that a little bit. That I know, Senator Torres-Ray, you're really involved with Latino Caucus and with Latino community leaders in the district, and that you may have events where you're bringing out emerging Latino community leaders. And I would hope that we as a Senate district with our leadership could come out to some of those events, even small numbers, to show them that we're peers, we're welcoming you in, come build something with us, so they don't feel like so they feel like they're fully welcomed. And same thing with Somali community members, and I think building something together and also just helping to relieve some of the isolation and fear that they're feeling is important. And then the other piece is on rural outreach. Representative Wagenius, he said, you're in Breckenridge and Big Stone County, and I love the idea, and ma'am, you said it out there too, the idea of getting out, even as a small group of volunteers from the Senate district, partnering and doing a trip out. I guess I would do it more like as peers, like it's a peer-to-peer exchange. We're going to go meet with DFL leaders there and volunteers and just exchange stories, and I think that would be a valuable thing and could create some possibilities for doing more work in the future. And finally, and then I'll shut up, with labor, I think it's so important that we show that we're, and we do, that we're on the front lines with labor. I just heard there's going to be a new flyer bus contract up, about 1,000 jobs between Crookston and St. Cloud in the next month or 2. And I'm meeting with Communication Workers America tomorrow here to say, well, how can we show up for you guys? I think that would send a really important message. It's just little parts. So anyway, thanks. Thank you.
One quick comment on to go back to the hierarchy and some of the things Dave just touched on. I spoke with a clergy person on Saturday. There are a number of faith communities in the Twin Cities, and if you're looking for a place to work, maybe it's not even yours, but maybe it is, who are looking at establishing themselves as sanctuaries. And this is specifically, as I understand it, in the conversation I've had, in response to the threats of deportations, and particularly the threats of deportations of kids. DACA, which stands for Deferred Action. It's kids who don't have legal status, who are brought over as children, and the federal government has their name and address and what school they go to. This clergy person is considering leading his faith community into being a sanctuary if they move to deport these kids. He was on a conference call, a national conference call the other night. I don't know who called it, but there were 900 clergy across.
So I've looked at a lot of the data of where we have not done well. So I worked for the AFL-CIO, and I looked at a lot of the data of working people, and I think one of the places that we lost was with union members and with, again, you were saying working families. So like I guess like I have a question and then a little bit of an explanation of it, which is like, when are Democrats gonna stop living in the shadow of Ronald Reagan? So I think like one of the big things, hindsight's 2020 in a lot of ways, one of the big things that, like Senator Torres, I was a big supporter of Bernie Sanders, and I think that one of the big things that drew me to the Sanders campaign was that there's a battle in the Democratic Party right now, and it's been raging for at least 4 years, and is the Democratic Party a liberal, like a socially liberal party for rich people, or is the Democratic Party like a populist party? And so I think the Clintons and Rahm Emanuel and Tim Kaine and a lot of others represent a status quo, neoliberal, austerity cuts first Democrat, whereas people like Bernie Sanders and the three of you and a lot of our inner city representatives represent a pro-populist, pro-workers party. But I think that people didn't see that in 2016 at the top of their ticket. And I guess like, my other question is then extending that, we see Charles Schumer now is the chair of he's the minority leader for the Democratic Party, and his top 10 donors are big business, big banks, and lobbying firms. And then even in Minneapolis, we saw people that claim to be Democrats running for school board taking money from giant educational reform companies. And I guess like my question is, how do we declare the era of neoliberalism and cuts first austerity to be dead in the Democratic Party? And like, what do we have to do to make that a reality?
Well, I think young people like you are going to force us to make it a reality. I just don't think that we can afford it. I think what was interesting about this election is that we understood now that it's just not young people and people of color, but there is a huge number of people out there who believe in this. And obviously, unfortunately, the messenger that we had in Donald Trump really was a person that was not telling the truth about what he could do with that. But we both understood where we were at. And we just chose, to give this to a candidate that will not, obviously was not able to inspire. But as I said at the beginning, I think this is where a district like our district and our congressional district as well as our Senate district could become incredibly influential. I think, have you seen the presentation that Keith Ellison has about the turnout in the 5th Congressional District? Could you raise your hands if you have seen it? So about 3 or 4 people. I would like you to go online and I would like you to visit his website and really look at what he has been able to do since he was elected to office. So Keith was elected to office the same year that I was elected. That was 2006. And at that time, I remember we were campaigning together. He understood and he proposed that we really needed to change this status quo, and we really needed to look at the numbers we have and the potential that we have as a Democratic Party to get out the vote. And he has increased the vote, almost double the number in the 5th Congressional District. Without the participation of the 5th Congressional District, we would have not had the governor's office, the Attorney General's office, the State Auditor's office, and the Secretary of State. We could have lost all of those offices. And the numbers are compelling. And Al Franken too, our Senate. So the numbers are very compelling for the 5th Congressional District. And we need to maintain that level of growth. And I think we need to challenge our Democratic counterparts in all the congressional districts to do the same, because The argument is that we do have the numbers, but we are not turning out. So I think that is an important issue, and we're only going to do it if we really understand the message that you just talked about. That's my opinion. Maybe another question.
Okay, so Governor Dayton is a really good example of what works. But here's the thing, if you recall, he was not nominated at the convention. And this is my big pet peeve with the Democratic Party, because we just did this with Hillary Clinton, where we basically crammed a candidate down our throat. Now, was she a great candidate? Yeah. And did I vote for her? Yes. But I also supported Bernie, knowing that Bernie was not going to get the nomination. But a lot of people were disenfranchised from the Democratic Party because they felt like Hillary Clinton was the anointed queen all along. So Dayton came in, he said, I'm not even going to participate in the convention, I'm just going to go straight to the primary, and he won the primary. Because at the convention we nominated someone else. I don't know if you remember that, but we nominated someone else, and that person would have lost. That person would have lost by a huge amount. So there's a problem in the arrogance, and he brought it up beautifully. You brought it up beautifully. If Hillary Clinton had come out and said, I'm against DAPL, I'm against pipelines, she probably would have won. If she had strongly come out against TPP, she probably would have won, because she would have gotten people out to vote. The Democratic Party on a national level, and then actually I remember the last town hall meeting you had where you said that in a lot of instances, if you're in kind of a weak district, the Democratic Party comes in and tells you how to vote. That is ridiculous. You should be getting elected on your merits. You should be voting on what your district wants. Just when you talk about statistics, 26% approximately voted for Trump, 26% approximately voted for Hillary Clinton. That means 74% did not vote for Trump, 74% did not vote for Clinton. So think about that. And which 74% do you want to be in? And how do we get the rest of them back? Lastly, is it okay if I talk about our event next week?
Sure.
Next week, I've been working, I run a nonprofit called Hacienda La Paz, and we've been working with the Police Conduct Oversight Commission to put on a peace forum. And we're going to actually do a series of them, maybe not always in a collaboration, but the first one is in response to the Philando Castile shooting. We are having members of the African American community and we have a city council person, we have somebody from the Police Oversight Commission, we have the Police Federation president, and we're still working on a few more people. And it's at Hook and Ladder Theater next Tuesday night. Doors are open at 6. And what it is it's going to be a conversation to bring forth some recommendations to the city and then hopefully to the state in the longer term to improve relations, improve training and recruitment of police officers, and change the atmosphere in the police department. Because somebody brought up a question, why is it we have to train police officers not to shoot black men? And so that's going to be kind of a central theme. And yeah, I just wanted to let you know.
Three over there somewhere. Oh, 3. And I think that's going to be about it.
Am I one?
You're one.
2 questions. One, are there issues that you think the Republican legislature will try to push through that we should be aware of? And 2, what's the landscape for the 2018 governor election? Who are, good, exciting candidates, and what can we do to help them? Knowing that we need to put more inspiring people forth.
It's hard to predict, but I'm going to try to predict in the Senate. Clear, at the national level, there will be a direction for that. I somehow fear that there is going to be a direction to change the way we fund public education in the Senate. I believe that there is going to be a big push for supporting through voucher or through some kind of a model, some parochial schools and private schools, and an emphasis on charter schools. So if I am correct on who is going to be the chair of the Senate, and when we have our first forum, after we know the structure of the Senate, we will have, after we know the structure of the House and the Senate, and we have a little bit more direction, we're gonna have a forum again, so we will let you know kind of how our prediction is. Based on my prediction for the Senate, for the Education Committee, I believe that would be the direction. I don't think we're going to see any push for infrastructure in Minnesota. I don't believe. I do believe that there's going to be a lot of push for redesigning some of the commissions around environment protections and environmental issues, because they tried that already and we were able to stop that. The governor will stop that, but there will be a movement in that direction. The redesign of the Metropolitan Council, that's something that is going to be almost a given. So there are a few things that we already know have been proposed and have been kind of the top priority for the majority, for the Republicans. Can you speak on the House issues?
I'm not going to disagree with her. What I'm going to do is add a couple. I think solar will be under fire, and we have this community solar that is on the law books now. I think they will try to put sand in the gears of that. The folks who support fossil fuel are extraordinarily anti-solar, not anti-wind. They've given up on that. They don't want wind, which is the cheapest form of electric energy right now. They don't want solar to become that cheap. So I expect that. The governor has said this is the year of water. I expect that, we all drink the Mississippi River water. There's no protection for that river. And we are going to be working to get some protection for the river. That I don't see a lot of hope, the Republicans helping us out in that at all.
We all have added things.
So certainly the tax cuts, in the tax bill that the governor vetoed was a House position, House Republican position, cutting taxes for tobacco companies. Certainly that will come through again. Stepping onto another area, I would expect some sort of Religious Freedom Restoration Act allowing businesses to discriminate against LGBT families and community. Anything that would undermine marriage equality. Anything that would undermine, just the security of LGBT folks. Probably going after the anti-bullying bill and the funding for the anti-bullying center at the Department of Education, just in terms of the larger LGBTQ concerns and some of the work that I've done. We'll defund Planned Parenthood and things along that line on some of those issues. Keep in mind that we can say the governor will stop this, but at the end of the day, he's going to have to settle the budget. And that means some of this stuff will pass into law so that other stuff doesn't. It's up to you to help him decide what the priorities are. That didn't stop with the election. Elections are commas, not periods.
I just thought of another thing I should put on the table here. The state can preempt local jurisdictions, including the city of Minneapolis, from raising the minimum wage, from anything, sick leave, parental leave, whatever. I totally expect that to come up. Let me add.
They tried really hard to do that. They just couldn't because they didn't have us and they didn't have the governor. They're going to try that.
So we all agree that. I'm just sure that's going to happen. As you're thinking about something that you should do, you should have the governor's email on your computer and email him regularly. Just help him. Say, you don't have to write books, write a sentence. Governor, I see that you are standing up for, no, we're behind you. Name the subject. He has got to hear from districts like this one that we are watching and that we're behind him. Because he's going to be under the gun like you could not believe. And this is going to be the most stressful 2 years he's ever had. No question, Mike, would you say? So, be there for the governor, and you don't have to write a book, just a sentence, and keep them coming. Lots of subjects, keep them coming.
And also, if you belong to organizations, you tend to participate in your organization so that they send, postcards to us on behalf of the organization because you're a member. That's okay, and we obviously pay attention to, but this individual, we count it differently. Because when you receive a stack of, let's say, Outfront Minnesota, it's just like, of course, they're my constituents, of course I'm going to receive, 300 postcards from Outfront. But when you receive individuals that have not just been given a sentence that you click in, but you write your own sentence, you only need one, that kind of has a different tone. So I think this is a very good advice, and please do take it seriously.
Our time is about up, and the gentleman will be our last question or comment.
Thank you. It was in this room quite a while ago that Paul Wellstone was running, and we all got energetic, right? That's how we reached out to our base. He had values that we all got behind because it felt like it was going to improve the lives of people. And I feel like the Democratic Party has kind of lost that soul over time. It's shifted, to the right, or you more call it the center. But he said we all do better when we all do better. And I think the fear, you want to reach out to the rurals, you want to reach out to people that don't look like you or agree with you, pass legislation that helps them, okay? I have a friend, she lives out in the rural, she said, Nixon put together a really comprehensive health care. It didn't pass, with Democrats in power. So I would like, as we move forward, to have the Democrat do some soul searching. And if you want people back in this party and stop looking at third parties, why do you think third parties got more, why do we want ranked choice voting? Because we don't really want to vote for someone that doesn't even talk about health care. So that's my problem, okay? I'm a lukewarm Democrat. I want to be a Paul Wellstone Democrat again.
Thank you. An excellent note to end on. Would our legislators want to say something to wrap up? Otherwise, we need to wrap up. We need to be out of here soon.
One thing to tell you.
So the plan going forward is to continue to hold forums and ask you to come. But again, we're going to change, the thought is change the structure in two ways. One, again, usually we do something like tonight where it's essentially open mic. What do you got a question for? What do you want to talk about? We'll respond. Instead, looking at doing issue-specific forums that not only focus the conversation, but then bring in partners, because if you really care about choice, I want Planned Parenthood and NARAL there, and I want you to walk over from your seat to their table and get engaged. Because some of the struggle that we're going to be facing is internal to the party. For those of you who identify as Democrats, much of it is outside. We won't be passing any legislation in the next 2 years. Exactly.
I get that.
So a lot of it is going to be outside of the party in those other organizations. Because if you take me and drop me in rural Minnesota and have me be the legislative candidate, I will lose. We need you to be connected with the issues you care about and get engaged and energized and stay there and bring in your neighbors. That's the only way we push back against Trump. That's the only way we push back against the sort of things that we're expecting in Minnesota that my colleagues have talked about. That's the only way we hold the governorship in 2 years. So look for more forums, but issue-specific forums.
Say thank you and good night, Jim.
Thank you and good night.